They don't care about the color of your skin or the crimes on your rap sheet. They don't care if you're a serial killer. Winning is the only thing that matters. Collective cries of anguish echoed through the heavens this past weekend. You may have heard the sound. It was the sound of trauma, of heartbreak, of great moral outrage. It was the sound of the left-wing hacks in sports media reacting to Shedeur Sanders, the son of former NFL star Deion Sanders, being drafted into the NFL a little bit later than most people expected. Now, for some background and context, Shedeur Sanders is a quarterback who played for Colorado, where his dad, Deion Sanders, is the head coach. And for months, most analysts projected that he would be selected in the first round of the NFL draft, which began on Thursday and ran for 3 days and 7 total rounds, as it always does, ended on Saturday. But the prognosticators in sports media are about as credible and have about as good a track record as the political prognosticators in the news media, which is to say they're full of crap most of the time. So Shedeur was not drafted in the first or even second round. Instead, he didn't come off the board until the 5th round when he was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, who selected a different quarterback, some other players, a water boy, a cheerleader, a janitor, before they finally got around to drafting Shedeur. Now, why does any of this matter? Well, it doesn't matter. But to the commentators in sports media, it was a national tragedy. Shedeur's brief draft slide was ESPN's 9/11. This was the NFL Network's Pearl Harbor. They'll never forget where they were when it happened. They were shell-shocked. They were dumbfounded, grief-stricken. Now, here are just 2 very short clips, and there are dozens I could play, but 2 very short clips that give you a pretty good idea of how they were covering this news. Watch.
Frankly, don't get it. I've never seen anything like it, and there's really not much of an explanation for it.
I'm at the portion of dad stage now, because reasons are going to come out later, but for me, very quickly, as we get ready for Ian, I'm thinking hugging this young man right now. I don't care how he's holding up. This is a very, very tough time for him.
Ian?
I would echo that. First of all, you guys mentioned the various people texting. I woke up to a text from my mom wondering why Shedeur Sanders has not gone. I mean, that's kind of where it's reached right now. I mean, it's everyone who casually follows football just wondering why the biggest name in the NFL draft has not gone. You know, you guys mentioned wanting to hug him. Charles did. I've got a lot of those texts from different draft rooms in the NFL just being, it feels so bad for him, poor kid. But those teams are also not taking him.
For Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders, all I can say is I think it's disgusting. I don't understand what the heck's going on with this.
It's disgusting. I don't get it. I've never seen anything like it. It's never happened before. I just want to reach out and give him a hug. Such a tough time for him. Now, to be clear, they are not talking about somebody who, survived a school shooting. They're talking about an already wealthy and famous athlete who had to wait a day longer than expected to be drafted into the NFL and get paid millions of more dollars to continue playing football. It's like weeping in the street because a trust fund baby got the wrong color Ferrari for her Sweet 16. I mean, most of the human population would kill just for the chance to experience this kind of disappointment. But the sports media, treated Shedeur like a Holocaust survivor because of it. And all of this would just be kind of funny and embarrassing, but not really worth discussing. After all, sports media embarrasses itself in some form pretty much every day. They embarrass themselves even more often than the news media does, if you can believe it. But what makes this whole spectacle something worse and perhaps more notable is the reason why the sports media were so outraged. And even if you know nothing about this story, and you don't even know who this guy is, you already have guessed where this is going. From 10 seconds into the first clip, you already knew what they were going to say next, didn't you? Because they very predictably made this about race. It was decided that Shedeur Sanders fell in the draft because he's black. Now, as an article in The Root put it, in the quote, Shedeur Sanders not getting drafted in the first, second, or third rounds of the NFL draft is like when that white cashier scrunches up her face and drops change in your hand instead of running the risk of touching you. Was she a racist Karen? Or is that how she treats all customers? It's a racism Rorschach test. Now, never mind the question of how else a cashier is supposed to transfer change from her hand into yours. What do you want her to do? Stroke your arm gently as she sensuously places one coin at a time into your palm? I mean, personally, I prefer that you just drop the change into my hands so we can both move on with our lives. But that's how I interpret the racism Rorschach test. On the other hand, for the race hustlers, when it comes to the racism Rorschach test, the answer is always yes, it's racist. And that's why lots of commentators in sports media, of course, jumped in to make it about race very explicitly. Here's another brief highlight reel. Watch.
We all know that it's not just about him being Deion Sanders' son. It's about the bravado he carries. It's about the fact that he looks a certain way. It is about the fact that the color of his skin sometimes at that position can be questioned.
Why didn't Shedeur get drafted in the first round? I got 3 reasons for y'all. I spent a lot of time. I was up till 1 a.m. last night really mulling over this decision. Why didn't Shedeur get drafted in the first round? Number one, he didn't code switch. What do I mean he didn't code switch? Shedeur Sanders did not change his identity or how he comes off for the sake of the decision makers. He did not change how he comes off for the sake of the decision makers. And who are decision makers in the National Football League? Primarily non-minorities, primarily white people.
So if it's not football, what is it? Are there racial undertones here? Racist undertones? You be the judge. Racism is so hard to sort of grasp and prove, but it just stinks. It smells of racist undertones, of too many white people in charge in this league.
That was Ryan Clark, Emmanuel Acho, and Skip Bayless in order. 3 of the most prominent sports commentators in the country. All of them agree that this came down to race. Skip is practically in tears over it. I mean, the guy's crying almost about it. Emmanuel says that he was up all night mulling about it, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. I assume he was reaching for the word mulling. But the other thing about sports commentators is that they really are, for the most part, fantastically stupid. I mean, these are very, very dumb people. Stephen A. Smith was also outraged. He was tweeting in a frantic hysteria all weekend, repeatedly invoking Colin Kaepernick and alleging that there was collusion at play, just as there was allegedly to keep Kaepernick out of the league. And it wasn't just sports commentators. Jamal Bowman, the former congressman, famous only for pulling a fire alarm, he's that guy, in case you forgot, he put out a video on Saturday claiming that Shedeur's fate is more evidence that America continues to fear strong black men, quote unquote. And he also said this.
I take it personal when I see someone like Shedeur Sanders, because he talk a certain way and because he wears gold chains and his pops is Deion and he don't want to submit to y'all white, he's gonna slip in the draft. And you're telling me it's based on the evaluation. Like, you didn't watch the games and watch him play and see him play. Like, it's crazy. Peace.
Now, given that I have an audience of intelligent people, certainly more intelligent than Jamal Bowman, who has the approximate IQ of a rubber spatula, I probably don't need to explain that these racism complaints are totally asinine. I mean, if you think that Shedeur wasn't drafted in the first round because he's black, you'll have to explain why the guy selected number 1 overall is black. Also, the guy selected number 2 is black. So was the guy selected number 3. So was the guy selected number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, 11, 12, 13, and so on. There were 32 selections in the first round. All but 5 of them were black. And this ratio, of course, held up through the entire draft, just as it did in last year's draft and the year before that and before that and before that and before that for decades, which is why only 25% of the players in the NFL are white. All of the rest of them are black or some other racial minority. The vast majority of NFL players are black. The vast majority of the biggest stars are black. The highest paid player in the league is black. So where is the racism coming into play exactly? Is it that black players are held to a higher standard? Are black players scrutinized and penalized and criticized more? That was one of the claims we heard very often over the weekend about this. Well, that doesn't really work either because Deshaun Watson, a black quarterback, was credibly accused of sexual assault by over 20 women. 20. And yet was still given the richest contract in league history after all of those accusations were made public. There are black players in the league who have been involved in all manner of scandals and crimes and alleged crimes. The Baltimore Ravens selected a player in the second round of this year's draft who was accused of rape in high school and then again in college. He's also black. but they needed an edge rusher, and the kid has talent, so they overlooked all the rape stuff. That's how NFL teams operate. I mean, they don't care about the color of your skin or the crimes on your rap sheet. They don't care if you're a serial killer. It doesn't. If you can help them win games, it's all that matters. Winning is the only thing that matters. You know, most people know the Ravens' most legendary player of all time, a black man, Ray Lewis, was charged with double murder. 2 people he was alleged to have killed. A year later, he won Super Bowl MVP after. So nothing matters in football but winning, which by the way, is what I love about football, actually. It's the ultimate meritocracy. Shedeur suffered his tragic drop, for which all of humanity weeps and the heavens cry out for justice, because he's not a great prospect. He's a pretty good prospect. He's better than me. He definitely should be drafted higher than I should, but he's not great by the standards of, by NFL standards. He's not as talented as a lot of the guys who went before him. Also, to make matters much worse, he's a high-maintenance diva with an ego bigger than any room he walks into. According to lots of reports, that's exactly how he came across in his pre-draft interviews with various teams. I mean, this is a guy who had a room custom built just for the draft night broadcast with the word legendary painted all over the walls. He has declared himself an NFL legend before even being drafted by a team. He hosted a draft party where he performed some of his rap songs, because apparently he moonlights as a rapper. And during this party, he walked around with a giant briefcase full of cash. At the NFL scouting combine, he said that he doesn't even need to explain why an NFL team should draft him. There's just no question that Shedeur deserves to be drafted, according to Shedeur. Listen.
If you ain't trying to change the franchise or the culture, don't give me. So you should know history repeats itself over and over and over, and I've done it over and over and over, so it should be no question why an NFL franchise should pick me. You think I'm worried about what critics say or what people gotta say? You know who my dad is? They hated on him too. So it's like it's almost normal. Without people hating, it's not normal for us. So we like diversity, we like everything that comes with the name. That's why we are who we are.
If you aren't ready to change the culture, don't draft me, he says. That was his message to teams considering drafting him, a message that was apparently heard loud and clear. This is, of course, the opposite of what you want to say in a job interview situation. Employers are looking for candidates who will fit into their workplace culture, not candidates who demand that the culture change for them. I mean, just imagine walking into an interview and saying, hey, if you hire me, I'm going to need you to change the whole culture and the entire way you do business. Okay? That's how special I am. That is a surefire recipe for getting laughed out of the room. The only real mystery here is how this jackass managed to find any team dumb and desperate enough to draft him, but it's Cleveland we're talking about. Dumb and desperate is sort of their brand. So it turns out they actually won't have to change their culture at all. In any case, in this story, what we find is, to me, the real tragedy of the left-wing race hustle. What really makes it so harmful, at least one of the things that makes it so harmful, which is that it constantly destroys opportunities for much more productive conversations. So many teachable moments, especially for younger people, have been wasted over the past several years because the usual suspects inject their racial victimization narrative into it, completely derailing what could have otherwise been a useful discussion. And in this case, we could have been talking about the value of humility. And we could use a lot more conversations about humility, as it falls second only to chastity as the most underrated virtue of our time. Shedeur comes from a generation that has been thoroughly brainwashed into the religion of self-worship. And his dad is Deion Sanders, who is one of the prophets of that religion. But in the real world, you can only get away with being a narcissistic nightmare if you're extremely talented and gifted. Basically, if the weight of your ego is still somehow outweighed by your skills. Well, then you can get away with it. But even then, you're only getting away with being a narcissist. It certainly isn't helping you. And eventually, as your skills fade, as they will for everyone, no matter your line of work, this equation may not work out in your favor anymore. You know, the thing about a narcissist is that their skills, their talents, their physical gifts, whatever it is that's causing people to put up with their nonsense, all of that isn't going to last forever. But narcissism, unchecked, will last forever, or at least until death. In fact, it probably will only grow with age, like a tumor. So the lesson is that no matter how talented you are, it's better to be humble. Like, there are two kinds of people in this world, after all, the humble and those who will be humbled, as Christ explains to us in the Beatitudes. It's much better to be in the first group than the second. And that's the lesson we could take from this. But instead, we're hearing again about racism. Because why talk about real issues when you can talk about fake ones? If the media had a motto, that would be it. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.